Hey, everybody, you are tuning in for our first episode of Let This Mind. I am Lala Calandra or Steph Jones, whichever one you want to call me. And I have two amazing co hosts with me who I'll let introduce themselves. Look, we're here to talk about everything mental wellness, and this is the month of mental health awareness. We're going to bring up all the topics that are taboo, we don't want to talk about. We're going to talk about how healers need to get healed, how we heal our families, how we make sure we're practicing self care. We're here to talk about it. So I'm going to let the co hosts share who they are. We'll start with Miss Jermay.
Well, as Steph said, ooh, am I still? No. Okay. Thought I was muted. Um, my name is Jermaine. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I do this full time. I do have my business, but I'm also a minister, teacher, preacher, whatever. I
Everything.
I am excited to be working with my two buddies, my homies, my like-minded melanated folks. So hello.
All right. Chris, let the people know who you are.
Um, Thank you for unmuting me. Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy May. It's May Day, right? May 1st. My name is Chris Melville. I am a black man in America. I'm a father. I'm an artist. I'm a social worker. Whatever the day calls for, that's who I am. But I'm happy to be here tonight as I don't want to even say expert, but someone who can provide an opinion or ideas on kind of the mental health space, and I feel like um, it's a good time, no better time than the Mental Health Awareness Month, and I wasn't even aware of that month, so thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah. Awesome. This is the month that, we want to make sure that people know of the mental health supports that are out there, how there's no shame, there's no guilt that's attached with needing some mental health assistance. We're removing the stigma, we're destroying all the things that have been talked about. We're making sure that people know that it is a safe place for you to go and talk to someone. You don't have to feel any guilt, you don't have to feel embarrassed or like you have to hide. This is normal for everybody. Things happen in life. We all go through. So we want to make sure that we're getting the best help possible. Jermaine, I want to throw this over to you because the topic of this inaugural episode, woo, woo, cheers, woo, woo. This inaugural episode is Wounded Healers. Can you just share a little bit about what wounded healers are? And then let's flow into the conversation of how wounded healers heal and how we just work and move and shift and things like that.
Yeah, so I remember reading, now don't ask me the book cuz I don't
What's the
know.
book?
I remember reading something all the way back in grad school, and someone had panned the phrase "wounded healer," and it's talking about how mental health counselors sometimes we are the reason why we chose to heal is because we have been in wounded places ourselves, and sometimes we work from that space and we learn how to um heal others also while healing self, and it's like what promotes us to be inside of the field that we're in, because people are like, why would you want to do mental health? Like, why is that a field that you chose? Like, your job is literally to listen and sit with people and traumas and tears and a lot of messy situations. And so I was really thinking, since all three of us work in the field, I also follow this page called From Therapist to Therapist, and it's needed. Like, we are often people's light, we are often people's guide, we are often people's listening ear, and we're always pouring, but like, what and who is pouring back into us? And so sometimes we achieve burnout because we're so passionate about the work that we do that we give it our all, and then it's like, okay, well, now my life is hitting me, but I can't focus on it because I have other things I have to do. So
Yeah, that's real. I mean, I think that therapists, just like doctors or nurses, often make the worst clients, right? We can tell everybody else what to do. Social workers are the same. We can tell everybody else what to do. We can
Hmm.
share what's going on. But when it comes time for us to take care of ourselves, we do the worst job. And so we're here to encourage everyone, like, if you're in a healing profession, if you're a therapist, a social worker, a life coach, if you're a pastor, right? If you're in a position where people are constantly pulling from you, then it's time for us to really get healed and make sure we're taking care of ourselves. Chris, what do you think it means to be a wounded healer, and kind of speak about what that means in your life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree with a lot of the same sentiments. Like we get into this field, um, so that way we may prevent someone from experiencing the trauma that we have experienced, or be a positive role model to them. And I think uh, for a lot of us, right, we get to certain accolades, right? I'm only a bachelor's level, and I know other people are, masters and doctors and all these other things, and we want to be our own experts, our own therapists, right? Or we are the person in the family who, I just need some advice about, what do you think about that person? And oh, that relationship, yeah, I saw that coming a mile away. When in reality, oftentimes we're bouncing ideas off of people. When for me, personally, my whole thing is I wanted the world to be a reflection, right? Looking in the
Mm.
mirror, and that kind of aspect of, um, I believe I see myself in everyone, and I have that level of empathy where I can relate to almost anyone in any situation. However, and even in that sense, is a blessing and a curse, because we feel as though because I relate to you, or because I see the same things in you, that means that I'll refuse to see the bad parts. I don't even like to label them as bad parts, but the unhealthy parts that we portray. And I feel like for me, as someone who, this it's not this journey has no end. This journey really has no end, and we can get into it a little bit more. But right now, I feel like if I had to describe where I'm at right now, I'm on that roller coaster, and it's kind of it's been up and down this whole year. I would definitely say that. But I get up every day knowing that I have a child, I have a daughter who helps pour into me and gives me the energy to do what I need to do. And I'm surrounded by people who are pretty open minded, and continue to give me guidance, and pick me up when I'm down. But yeah, we want to definitely make sure that we're taking care of ourselves as much as we're taking care of everyone else too.
Hmm. Doesn't Chris have such a nice voice? All the listeners, give him a shout out, okay? Such
I'm
a
trying to
nice
share it to
voice.
my people too. I'm just so I'm looking at my phone too, making sure that
That's all
people are
right.
getting
Share it out.
people are getting
Awesome.
it.
Oh man, just great. You can hear him reading an audiobook. Let's do, we'll do some meditations. Look, you don't know what's coming from Let This Mind, okay? The possibilities are endless.
Absolutely.
But it's true, it's so wild, because often we end up sharing from our open wounds, or like, from these bleeding wounds, and we end up bleeding on people,
Mhm.
and we end up cutting and hurting people who did not cut or hurt us. And so
Mhm.
that's a reality. And you can still feel a certain way. You've been through some things. Like, man, for me, the biggest traumatic event in my life was when my parents got divorced when I was 11 going on 12. Like, that was a nuclear bomb to our family. It shifted the entire, I would say, trajectory of my life, how it was going to go. But now I jumped into, being an advocate for mental health, because that was my trauma response. I just saw a post about that the other day. Being a therapist was my trauma response. I was like, I have to figure out what's going on in my family. I need to understand what's happening. I need to understand what's occurring. So, the wounded healer is someone who's going to take what they learned and try to help others with it. And I feel like we're in such a good space to do that, especially with this month, and everywhere we're going.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom in the comments talking about he does have a soothing voice.
Come on, mom. You know what it is? Look,
I
mom
can't
has a
see the
good
comments, so
ear,
I'm gonna
okay?
stay humble. I'm gonna stay humble, but thank
Yes,
you.
mom has a good ear, just super soothing. But and then healers end up being that soothing, calming presence. You really can't experience a certain level of peace until you've gone through a certain level of chaos. Like,
Talk
there
about
has
it.
You know what I'm saying? Like there
Oh,
has to
no.
be that level of chaos that you've gone through, that you've come out on the other side and you're like, the only path I'm choosing is peace. That's the wounded healer. That's where
Mhm.
we have to get to and flow to. So
Yeah.
it's difficult, right?
I think, and I
I
want
mean,
to. I
I
mean, it
think the
just.
problem. Whoop. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry. No, I just want to acknowledge too, like this field that we're in is so new, right, compared to a lot of the other
Yep.
sciences. Like, we're talking about, I mean, now 150, less than 200 years. Like, it's really a new space, and
Yeah.
um, because we're in our own space. I'm gonna, just say, for Black men and Black women, especially the space of therapy and kind of healing is, there's so many stigmas that, Jermaine and I have talked about and she's talked about at length on her um, separate platforms, and everyone's talked about to some extent. But because this field is so new, right? It's trying to figure out and trying to build backwards, right? Go back to, okay, well, it might start at slavery. It might start at it might not even start here in America for people who aren't from here. So it's just going back to that and having like a level of self awareness, I think, is important. But acknowledging like this is a new field. This is very new, and there's a lot of I mean, at least in my experience, what I've noticed, I like to look at the bigger picture and also the fine details. But there's a lot of gatekeeping in this field as well. So uh, but there needs to be more of us in this space, so that way we can help our communities for sure.
Mhm.
Sorry, Jimmy, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I Whatever you said was way better than what I was saying, because all I was saying was it's a shame that I think what Chris was saying about being a gatekeeper is that we are often doing a lot. And
Yeah.
I tell my clients all the time, like, listen, if I'm doing more work than you, that's a
Mm,
problem. Like, don't think that I need to be trying to find all of the I just told my client this. She's what, 15 going on 16, and I was like, don't come to therapy thinking I'm gonna do more work than you are. Like, Miss Ma'am, this is your life. I can't lead it for you. And while we try to be compassionate and understanding, we also have to like stick it to them and be like, listen,
Hmm.
this is not easy. And as a wounded healer, I think the misconception is that like we're healed 100% ourselves. And I said, please don't, please, let's let
mm,
me debunk that real quick for you.
Hmm.
Jermaine is actively learning and growing and healing, and there's triggers that happen in sessions, but luckily I went to a grad school that prepared me
Ooh.
for what would happen. Shout out to Eastern Nazarene. Hey,
Ooh, ooh.
because when you get triggered in the session and you're just kind of sitting there, kind of like self-soothing, doing a little rocking, and it's like, whew, all right, I need to decompress after this session. And so, we're all healing. And that's why I love the term wounded healer, because we're all trying to figure it out and we're all trying to do the best that we can. Like, books are great, what Freud said and Piaget did and all of them, good stuff. But that doesn't mean we have all of the answers just because this is our profession.
So true. And I mean, really taking a moment to be aware of our own feelings. I mean, even debunking the same kind of stigmas that we have in the church. Like, pastors and ministers are perfect, or they're on this pedestal and they don't mess up, they don't make mistakes. No, the same thing with wounded healers. We're acknowledging our wounds. We're not running from them. We're not putting on a facade or a mask, right? We're saying, hey, we are wounded. We see
Hmm.
that you're wounded. Let's come and heal together. And you
Hmm.
both have said something that I really believe too. Healing is a process that never ends. Healing is always going to be, and you could tell when someone has stopped healing because they start reverting. You start going backwards. You start undoing the things that you kind of worked out and made sure you were taking care of when you were healing.
Yeah.
And so if we're not healing, then we're not growing. And if we're not
Right.
growing, then we're dying. And that's a
mm,
reality. So the
Hmm.
wounded healer is always healing
Yeah.
because you want to just keep going. It's like having fresh water in a stream.
Hmm.
And sometimes we get so afraid and we get so embarrassed of what we went through, right? Like, oh, I can't talk about this. The more we talk about it, the more we share what we went through, we'll find, I'm like, oh, Jermaine went through that and Chris went through this. We have to share with each other so we can all know we're not isolated, we're not alone. Because that's sometimes, that's what I deal with as a wounded healer. I'm like, oh, if I tell someone this, maybe they'll look at me a certain way. When I share, they're like, oh, I went through that too. I'm like, oh, like it's such a sigh of relief, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the biggest thing too is like that community aspect. And I know when we all talked on Friday or last week, um, the biggest thing that we wanted to do in order to differentiate ourselves from, you know, a random person on the street is that we do have the credentials to, you know, the credentials, the experience, the titles, the roles that do encompass healing in all aspects, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, even though for me, I'm not doing therapy, let's say in my day to day, but I am responsible for a host of adults and youth who I have to role model how to, you know, deal with difficult circumstances or deal with crisis situations or deal with, you know, to other people what are emergencies, but for me, it's inconveniences, and I think it takes a delicate balance. Um, you know, one of the things that I always ask myself, or I try to ask people, challenge people, is like, who do you look up to, right? Like, I don't. I'm 20, about to be 27 years old, but you know, I've always had like people I look up to when I was younger.
Mm.
Even now at this age, is like who can I role model myself after? But the idea is that, you know, we're not perfect. Like I say all the time, like I made a mistake in a meeting that I had last week, and you know, I acknowledged it and I moved on from it, because the idea is that we want to be better. You know, we want to grow. We want to try to be better than we were yesterday, be better than we were last year, and yeah, and right, when you do revert back into those negative habits, it's only, you know, really, I wouldn't even say not only hurting yourself, but hurting the people around you. And I know I've struggled with those things, you know, every single day. Uh, you know, and like I said, you know, life it goes up and down, but for a lot of us, it's really about finding that community. You know, I think a lot of people are conditioned to not talk about what they're going through. Um, as a man, I can definitely say we are not. But thankfully, I've been raised by strong women, and I've had community with men who, you know, we can talk about our emotions, and it's not looked at as feminine or not masculine or any of those things. And because we're human, at the end of the day, we're all human beings
Yeah.
having this, you know, a similar experience or a different experience with similar feelings, and it's about making sure that we feel safe to do that, or you know, even when we're in our respective roles as healers as well.
Mhm. Safe spaces is like my phrase for my life. Um, you know, in all of the conversations I have with friends, family, clients, is that without a safe space, we will hold everything in, we will burn ourselves out, we will run ourselves thin, and the safe spaces need to be created, especially for the healers of the world. We all need a safe space. Like, I was talking to one of my best friends, and I was like, girl, thank you for being a safe space because I need a space where I can like let my hair down and not be so perfect. If I want to be messy for 35 seconds, I don't have to feel judged if I
Mhm.
talk hood or ghetto or just not put together and whatever. I need a space where I can do that because oftentimes I am looked at because I'm a leader in a lot of the places that I go. It's like,
Mhm.
ooh, Jabay, you
Hmm.
can't do that. And you can't say this. And you have to be an example. And you have to be put together. And it's like, I am not that polished.
Mhm.
Not yet. And so if I have a safe space where you guys, I have personal conversations and relationships with both of you guys, but there are times where I'm just like, can I just like unload and just be here, and that safe space is necessary. And if you don't have one, we have to find one, create one for
Hmm.
yourself, create one with people that you trust, because it is so necessary doing what we do and being who we are, not just as healers but as people of color in this world. it is so necessary to have a space where it's like, if I want to emote, I'm going to emote and not be
Mhm.
judged. If I feel like, emotionally dumping on someone, find someone who can carry that. And then just be like, all right, you're good. No, move along. And whatever you need, I'm here for it. It is so necessary. I try to create safe spaces, and I realize as much as I create them, I don't know how much I have. So I had to like really reevaluate situations I'm in to make sure that I have the safe spaces.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the season that we're in, right? Like, especially for those of us who give a lot of support to people. And Jermaine, I'm in that same season where I have to reevaluate every single relationship that I'm in, like friendship, sisterhood, brotherhood, every relationship that I'm like, okay, I'm connected to someone in. Because what we do as wounded healers, we give and 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 just keep giving and giving. And then when we really look up from all the giving, there's an imbalance there. There is a place where we're like, man, I want to be supported. I want to be able to almost get me from me, which I know sometimes is an
Mm.
impossibility, right? So having the safe space is important, and we have to be realistic about our safe spaces. We can't make something a safe space that isn't. Just because we want it to be a safe space doesn't mean it is. And if we continue to dump into that safe space, we'll be frustrated, angered, and annoyed. And so really taking the time to evaluate, like Jermaine is saying, I love that. Take a moment, right? That's why I fell into the Selah so much, because we have to sit in contemplative reflection. If we need to take a moment to realize and see where the reciprocity is or isn't, where is my safe space? If I'm being a safe space to 1,000 people, I need to have almost just as many places where I can dump and pour and be and exist. If
Mhm.
I'm a safe space to 1,000 and I have two safe spaces, oh, there's an imbalance in the force. Something's going
Hmm.
wrong. Something's
Say
up.
it. Say it.
So, and it's having the honest conversations with ourselves. Wounded healers, we have very tough conversations with ourselves. Yes, I can do that. No, I cannot do that. Boundaries. Oh my gosh. We have to have the proper boundaries, or we're going to be pulled in every separate direction, and we're going to be spent and done and finished. Done. Complete.
Mhm.
Over.
Mhm. Mhm.
Chris,
Yeah,
you
I
got.
mean, I I have a lot of difficult conversations with people, and I tell them, I was like, don't think I am any easier on myself. I am sometimes my worst critic because I am
Yeah.
constantly like, girl, did you just say what I thought you said?
Mm,
And the pressure that we carry, right? We're looked at as the experts,
yeah.
right? And no matter how long you have been in the field, if you have letters behind your name, you have now been considered an expert.
An
And I say,
expert.
y'all, um,
That's pressure.
a
Hmm.
lot of pressure, a lot of pressure. And so sometimes I'll be in my own head, like, that session was trash. Like, Jermaine,
Terrible.
what? Like, and I'll be like, you don't want to send people home or send them on their way. And, something you said could have just triggered them. And that's weight that I carry all the time. And so, obviously, because of confidentiality and, HIPAA policies and everything like that, I can't go to Chris if I'm calling him and I'm like, Chris, let me tell you about my client. I can't do that.
Hmm.
So oftentimes I'll just be like, Chris, I just need chit chat. I just,
Mm-hmm.
I just help me. And it's great talking to Chris and Steph or Lilac. It's great
Mm-hmm.
talking to them because they get it. Right. And that's also a part of like me in ministry as well. Like I just can't talk to anybody about the weight of ministry because like you don't get it, you don't
Mm-mm.
understand that when you're called there is a cost, when you are chosen there is a cost. And I know the Bible talks about count the cost, but ooh, I thought I counted it and I must have had a
Mm-mm.
miscalculation somewhere. 'Cause
More things just keep adding up. That receipt is getting mighty long
it's the CVS receipt out here and I'm like,
with the coupons.
I thought I knew and I thought I was ready, but ooh.
Baby.
So a safe space isn't just like a place to dump and to emote. It's also a place to be seen, heard, embraced, welcomed, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I think the pandemic really made things a lot um, in terms of mental health, a lot more open and available. And I know, speaking to a few people specifically, if you're living at home still, or living with family and all those different things, sometimes it's hard to get that safe space, um, just because of the, whatever culture you come from, or family dynamic. Um, if you're that person who's pushing against the grain, you're right. You always be the odd one out,
Right.
right? So it can be difficult for people to want to trend in the positive direction, or trend in, I wouldn't even say positive, but in a different direction, when they're so used to, or people are so used to, I'm so used to Lilac in one way, and now she's switching up because we ain't going out on Friday and getting blackout drunk and doing all these things, or Jamae switching up because I can't call her and you know talk on the phone how we used to, and I think for a lot of people, it's like we talked about, examining those relationships, reevaluating the threshold of what we can tolerate or not tolerate, and then
Yeah.
creating those safe spaces, right? I
Mhm.
know uh, a lot of people go to going to work is their way of not dealing with a lot of things, right? Workaholics, or people who um, you know I know for me, I know for myself, like I'm just thinking about what we were talking about. My poetry is my safe space, and I know I've been neglectful of that a lot because other things have come up. But at least being able to identify what is important to you, or what allows you um, to be yourself. I think just be yourself with non-judgment is important to do, and I know for a lot of us we don't have that. And what I would encourage is to find, if it's not one person, right? The expectation is that everyone does have a therapist, but we know there's not enough therapists for as many people. Um, like I mentioned, we can talk about that a little bit more, but like the gatekeeping aspect of access to, if you have health insurance, or if you, I know for some people they only want a black, woman therapist, or a black man therapist, and I think sometimes that hinders us from taking the appropriate steps in order to get a safe space. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think in the community of amongst ourselves, it's abundant, right? Because we work with all these people all the time. But for the person who is dealing with undiagnosed bipolar disorder, and it runs in their whole family, but they know enough to speak up on it and address it. Someone said journaling, but reflecting on yourself, on what you can actually do to kind of create safe spaces, if it's just traveling to work, or just taking a walk, or whatever the case is. I think finding those, I don't want to say coping skills, but things that make you happy um, is important.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it is coping skills. And,
Mm-hmm.
Jermaine mentioned the self soothing too. Like, we have to, I think the pandemic really did show us that there's a lot more of things that we have to do to make sure we're okay. We're not always going to have someone, unfortunately.
Right.
I'm still seeing clients virtually. Like, let's just be real honest. Even now, some I see in person, but there are clients who still just want to be seen virtually. So someone's not always going to be in this space. And so we have to really take ownership of how we take care of ourselves. That's the purpose of why we decided to come together on a Monday night with our busy schedules, with things going on, to make sure that we're putting out consistent content that encourages us to take care of ourselves. Because, just like they say on that airplane, put on your own oxygen mask first and
Mm-hmm.
then help everybody else. Wounded healer, if you're listening, if you'll listen later on at the replay, make sure you're taking care of yourself so that you can continue to take care of others, because we're really no good. We're depleted and done, and we're poured out, and we're spent, and we're burnt out. Then you do serve from a place that is a bleeding, open, gaping wound, and it's like, ugh, we can't do that because enough people have been damaged and hurt. And the conversation is so good. I'm just like, ooh, it's good to have the male perspective. I think in this, especially the Black male perspective, because you all aren't encouraged to share your emotions and get them out. And as young boys, we tell you, don't cry, be a man,
Mhm.
man up, hit you in your chest. And then as grown women, we're like, why aren't you able to share your emotions and what's going on? Now it's a contradiction, right? And so
Mhm.
we need to encourage the full expression everywhere. We can do that in that safe space where we can just be free. We don't have to try to be all right, like prestigious and put together. We can just literally just like chill, take a load off, take a deep breath, and really connect with someone who is not going to judge us, who we don't have to worry about the information we shared reaching back and circling back to us, so we can know that this person is a safe space for me and I am in turn a safe space for them. That's true reciprocity. That's where
Mhm.
healing comes in. You're
Mhm.
pouring, I'm pouring, and we're going back and forth. And there's like a freedom and a relief in that too.
Mhm. Yeah, healing, the process of healing, I think people don't understand. It's definitely not linear. The
No.
same way change and growth is not linear either.
Mhm.
I had a conversation with someone, and they were talking about, "Oh, I was so good. I didn't self-harm in 2 years, and I messed up once, and now I'm back at square one." I said, "Miss ma'am, mm-mm. Mm-mm."
You're not.
Like, I was like, even when scars are healing, there'll be times where it's very sensitive to touch. Other
Mm,
times it'll be bleeding. It might gush a little, like you don't heal once from
right.
something and then it's like, okay, I got it. Like, no, because people and things and the world and the enemy, they know they don't care about how well we heal. Like, I remember watching a preacher one day and he was like, some people prefer the unhealed version of you because you make room for their toxicity. And so, because that's a thing, people won't want you to heal and won't want you to
That's
advance.
right.
And so,
That's right.
even though you're changed, the people around you hasn't necessarily changed. So all of the things that you tried to overcome, they're still going to try to tempt you and poke you with and say
For
like, "No,
sure.
come on, come on, come on, come on." And just because you mess up and have a moment of like failure or make a mistake, and it's like, okay, the healing process doesn't mean one and done. You got to keep going. You got to keep living. You got to keep going back to the drawing board if you need to. You have to keep starting and having a reset. I love that word. Like, my client said it to me the other day and I was like, well, shoot, I'm stealing that. Reset as
Mhm,
often as you need to. And I
mhm.
think as people of color, as parents, as aunties and uncles and grandparents, and whoever, what type of leadership that you may have, we always have to remember, like, healing, it's a process, and it's going to take some effort, it's going to take failures, it's going to take some tears, it's going to take a tribe, it's
Yes.
going to take a lot of things out of you, but like the important thing is to keep going because healing is hard. And
Mm,
I tell my clients, like, don't think this is some easy stuff.
right.
Healing is hard. If it was so easy, everyone would do it. It's
Mhm.
hard. It's hard to realize I might be the problem. It's hard to look at yourself in the
Oh,
mirror and say, like, things are failing because I'm the toxic
maybe
one.
it's me.
And hmm, huh, that's hard. I don't
Oh,
care how humble you are. No one wants to be the problem.
oh.
Like, when I realized that, and I said, "Ooh, Jermaine, dang it, girl, back to page one." Like,
So
and
someone
it,
said ouch in the comments. Ouch. Ooh.
yes,
Oh.
ouch, and
Oh.
reset as often as you need to. It hurts. And so,
Yeah.
as healers, we're often like trying to heal others and self simultaneously, and sometimes it gets all messy.
Mixed up.
And it's just like crazy. And yes, therapists do have therapists. It's a thing.
I
Just like
think every
doctors have
therapist
doctors. Like, come on.
I
It's a
think
thing.
every therapist should have a therapist because you need a space, or therapist friends, right? I
Yeah.
realize that I surround my I told Jermaine and one of our good friends, Lady D, I told them that, like, this is why I need you both in my life, because you try to share with other people and they're like, oh, okay. Wait, I'm like, oh, I need a little bit more from you. I need a little more razzle dazzle. I need you to ask me the probing questions, because
Mhm.
that's how you end up getting out what you need.
Yeah.
Someone asks me a question, it triggers something in me, not in a bad way. It triggers a response that I say, "Ooh, let me dig this out." Wounded
Mhm.
heal. We dig stuff out. We unpeel. We peel back the layers. We uncover, because it's like I can ask you one probing question, or someone can ask me a probing questions. We can talk for 4 hours after that, because that question will lead to some revelation, and with revelation comes healing. And I'm like, oh shoot, get around some folks who will ask you the questions that will make the lights turn on, that will trigger a healthy response to say,
Mhm.
I needed to be asked that question. Get around some people who will challenge you. We don't need yes people in this season. We don't need confusion and no, we need people who have clear ways of thinking, who know I know you, so I know the question to ask you. I know how to support you. Let me ask you this. And you see the light turn on and you're like, "Oh wow, let's just keep rolling on this." That's the season we're in, because there are some things that still need to get out of us. It's not linear. Healing is that up and down roller coaster. Your stomach's butterflying all over the place. You're trying to hold on to your hat. You're trying to hold on to your wig. You're trying to hold
Okay,
on
or
to
your
everything.
wig.
Hold your wig. Hold, Chris, hold your hat. It'll blow off in
I
the
know.
wind. And that's just what it is. But you end up enjoying that all up and down all over the place. Because when you get to that stable position, you start to say, "Oh, I can appreciate it," and then that roller coaster is off again and again and again. It's a journey, absolutely, Cynthia. It's a journey that we learn to appreciate, I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, I mean it's one of those things where jumping off of what both of you said, right? I don't think I do love the idea of a reset,
Yeah,
and
big
I
time.
don't ever think it's square one, right? I
Right.
think
Right.
we look at it, people look at, if we use the analogy of jobs, right? Like, oh, I don't have enough experience doing that, or I don't have enough experience doing this, and in reality, when you think back and reflect on it, you know, my whole, even though I turned 18, I was able to work legally there. All that time before and all that time afterwards is all experience that I've had, and
Mm-hmm.
every relationship or friendship or dynamic with my parents or whatever the case is, it counts for something. And I
Yeah.
think being able to acknowledge that, and the biggest piece is acknowledging when we're wrong, right? Because a lot of people think, oh well, right? I mean, I'm sure both of you have heard it, right? Oh, don't psychoanalyze me, or
Ooh,
don't analyze me. Like, you can't help it.
psychobabble.
I've been doing, I've been reflective my entire life since I was 3 or 4 years old, and seeing the world around me, and questioning, why is that like that, and why aren't my parents, why didn't I see a marriage, and all that stuff, and why didn't I have all those, just asking questions at that age. I wasn't a therapist. I was just a child wondering questions who turned into a man asking the same questions,
Mm-hmm.
to myself and to people around me, just to
Mm-hmm.
kind of spark those ideas. And I think
Yeah.
the reset comes where we make mistakes that uh, trigger those positive flags and those red flags, and we say, all right, how do I what is this moment trying to teach me, or what is this experience trying to teach me,
Mm-hmm.
and how can I apply what I know, um, how can I apply what I know or have learned, because I'll tell
Mhm.
you, it's every, in the field, it's every day you kind of got to reevaluate, what your threshold is, and at some points it's like, all right, well, now I know from dealing with this person from before, maybe I've seen this before, maybe this will help. And if it's not, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got from someone who I look up to, a mentor, is this, impact over intention, right? Our intentions may always be uh, to help, but even when helping, right, we could be, for them it may be, or for the other person it may be, they may look at it negatively, or might harbor negative energy towards that, or you might be triggered by whatever they say. And I think it's just really examining that and having that open dialogue to say, um, and you may not know, like, you said something that bothered me, or you did something that bothered me, or vice versa, and being able to move forward from it. But the whole idea of, the reset, I love it. I just want to remind people, right? We have our experiences that have carried us to where we are, and we always carry those no matter what, what we're doing or what role we're in, or who we're dealing with.
Hmm. Absolutely. We can never escape ourselves. As much as
Hmm.
we heal, we're always going to carry our own experiences, our own traumas, our own pain, our own hurt, our own joys, right? Our own times of celebrating, and that is the building block to the next level of healing. If we decide to deny that, or if we decide to say, that's not who I am anymore, you can still acknowledge what you've been through, or having to go back to the unhealed or the broken, you know what I mean? The broken
Mhm.
side of you, that person who was just destroyed and mean to everyone, or just depressed or feeling anxious and all that. You can still think about that person and use that to propel you forward. And that's what we have to do, right? That as we heal and as we, because I feel like we cultivate the atmospheres of healing. Like, hey, I'm not gonna let this just sit. Or if I see a certain behavior, I'm gonna be like, hey, wait a minute, let me ask about this. Let me try to figure out what's going on, because I see you're on a wrong road. And someone I know did that for me. So we end up being, that shoulder to cry on, that person to lean on, or that kind of push to say, wait, I see you kind of going down a path. And there is a lot of pressure. Just going back to that, there's a lot of pressure to always be in these spaces of healing, but we have to be, right? If you take a break from your healing for a second, sometimes that pause will turn into a stop, and then you'll be back in the same space you were. And so there's a lot of pressure to keep this ball rolling. That's why it's good to be around a good team of people who want to keep the ball rolling. Like, this is not an isolated time where we're just by ourselves and no one knows our story and no one knows what we've gone through, and we can't share or touch base with anyone. Because once you get into isolation, you end up just backing up for everyone and plugging and saying, I don't need anybody else. By ourselves, our thoughts will take us down and out, and we'll be over with. People won't hear from us. People won't see us. I mean, and it's just a reality of the life that we're living and where we are. We know the suicide rate is high. And if you didn't know, it's very high, and it's very high amongst our youth now, right? Those in the high school age, those are the ones who are saying this pressure is too much. We have to, if you're a healer, we have to focus on every generation, where we're looking at our youth, we're listening, our ears are open, we're making sure to check on the elderly who might be feeling a certain way because they're not as mobile. Like this, it just goes a whole way along, and we have to always be paying attention on every step of the journey. It is a lot of pressure, and our shoulders be like, ooh. But when you find your safe space, you can unload and you can unwind, and then you can just be free and prepared to take on some more, because something's always coming.
I mean, my safe spaces have been with both of you guys, and then some of the people that have been on my podcast. Like, I just feel like there's a moment when, um in your safe spaces, if someone, gives you a little moment of truth.
Yep.
Because let me tell you about the men in my life, Chris being one of them. They don't give me no type of slack anywhere. Like, these men are willing to call Jermaine out on any and everything. I was like, well, wait, hold on, let me emote first.
Hmm.
Men, like, Darren is one of them, Chris is one of them, my other friend Darnell, he's one of them. Like, they will be like, it's not as healthy as you think it is, Jermaine. And
Hmm.
sometimes, I don't know, after those conversations with my male brethren, I go feeling heard and seen, validated, but then hurt at the same time. I was like, y'all
Hmm.
just can't keep doing this to me, because I need y'all pull back just a little bit.
Hmm.
But as much as I complain about the stuff that they do, I thank God for them, because, given the spaces that I have to occupy, it's like, girl, you can't stop here. Don't be having a pity party and woe is me, and oh, I'm having a bad moment. They don't pity me at all. Sometimes I
Hmm.
wish they would. They don't. They just be like, I hear you. But anyway, get back up. Let's go. Keep going. And I'm like, dang it. That's why I like talking to my females, because they a little bit more
Hmm.
empathetic. But we need that. We need people who's going to keep pushing us into the purpose that God has for us. And sometimes, I think when we talk about church folk, right? Uh I've had more unsaved people keeping me aligned in my walk than some of my safe friends.
Yeah.
Because there are times where I wanted to do stuff and my unsafe friends were like, now Jamae, you
You
know good
know,
and well.
God be pleased with you.
Right. Like, do you think God would want you to do that? Like, I know you feel in a way. And they minister to me as well. So it's like, get you some people that's gonna keep you here. Cause sometimes we get very, maybe not y'all. Maybe this is just Jermaine. Jermaine just be
No,
all over the place.
you're talking right. You're talking right.
And you need people that's like, hold on, just stay here. This is your parameters. Stay here. So
Hmm.
yeah. I
Yeah.
love you though, Chris. You're great.
I can't. I mean, I can't help it, but I also can't help it. Um, I mean, I'm hardwired to fix everyone's problems but my own. No, I'm just kidding. I mean,
No, there's
but
truth.
there's truth to
There's
that.
truth to
There's
that.
truth to that, and I'm not gonna graze over it. I'm gonna talk on it for a minute.
Okay.
And I think coming from the households or the family dynamics that we come from, um, I'm not gonna say there were no men in my life because that would be a lie, but they weren't as consistent as they probably as the women. I'll just say keep it like that. Um, and I can go on for a very long time on the history and all that stuff, but just in terms of my life, I've had to. Um, I still fall into those habits too, right? The isolation. I want to be a fixer to everyone else and not really let anyone in on my problems because sometimes it feels like complaining. Um, when I'm expected or feel like um, I don't even it's like imaginary ceilings or imaginary expectations or
Mhm.
pressure that's put on us. And I know a lot of people feel that I'm not the only one. But in those moments, you certainly do feel like, all right, well, how do I get myself out of it? Or, I, isolate for weeks at a time. And like I said, dive into work or dive into our other kind of roles that we take on. And, I think for the most part, I know for me, there's a level of confidence now that I definitely didn't have. Like if I could talk to 17-year-old me now,
Mhm.
17-year-old me would be like, all right, bro, like you gotta, let's do this, let's do this, do this. You're good at this, so keep pushing on this direction. Don't let anyone take you off your path. Don't doubt yourself because at the end of the day what your goal is, right? That same 3 and 4-year-old that was like, what is going on in this world? As I was the same 17-year-old was just like, all right, I kind of have an idea, right? Let me go to school for uh, what a philosophy and sociology. That didn't work out. Let me try social work. Music didn't work out. Let me try social work. So, um, just kind of being forgiving of myself, but also knowing like, okay, at some point in time, you know, you have to have other people to bounce ideas off of. You have to have that community and um, what I like to be for the people I work. I do work with youth, male youth specifically. I want to be that for them, right? Asking those questions, and they may seem like, oh, that's random, but it's like, no, it's not random. It's like you're on the cusp of adulthood. I really truly believe that we should obviously treat children like children, but don't dismiss them as children for 17 years and then put the expectation on once they're 18 that they
Come
should have it
on.
figured out. Because if I'm saying that for 17 years, that don't worry about it, stay out of grown folks' business, you're a child, you're this, you're that, and then they turn 18 and they're asking all these questions like, why didn't you know? That's, I mean, we couldn't get any more contradictory than that. So, my whole mission now is, like we said, those generations are what makes, uh, that intergenerational help and healing works, right? I mean, like I said, when I'm 60 years old, I still want to be able to talk to 13-year-olds and say, this is what I did. This was my journey. When I was, I know you're excited for adulthood, but slow down a little bit. Like, it's going to get there. You're going to enjoy it. There's going to be moments and times where things are going to be very difficult, but you have to, like we've all talked about, surround yourself with positive people, people who are going to hold you accountable, and really, live life with with the idea that you're not the only one going through something, because everyone, at some level, whatever your privilege is or whatever your skin color is, somebody's going through something. Um,
Yeah.
and I think, I know for me specifically, a lot of my things have been like anxiety around just like life or death, anything. Like making
Mm.
it to 21, happy. Making it to 25, I'm happy. I want to make it to 65 now and 75
Mm.
and all those other things. So, what do I have to do now in order to get to that point? But I know I've gotten here. I haven't gotten here where I am now alone. I think that's the biggest point.
Chris, believe it or not, you were preaching, and so especially that piece about us kind of shunning young children are
Right.
best seen and not heard. My mother
Not
tried to say
heard.
it
Right.
to me when I was 34. I said, Ma, hold on now.
Mhm.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
Just a minute. That is probably the most hurtful statement that we could say to a child, because we are telling them that their voice doesn't matter. And right
Right.
at 18, we dump all the responsibility right on their shoulders, right on their heads. And then we're like, you're not prepared? What's wrong with you? What's going on? We have to properly prepare them. I was just thinking about this too. I don't know, and this is on topic, but kind of off topic. So kind of roll with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I work at a school. I'm a school counselor at a high school, and I've been seeing a lot of videos pop up where students are fighting teachers, right? Like straight attacking them, like slapping
Mm-hmm.
them, hitting them, punching them. A lady's leg got broken, you know what I mean, from a student. And so I started thinking that I think students don't realize that teachers or staff are actual human beings, right? That we're not just there to teach, or we're not just there to serve you. We're not just there to make sure you have a good experience. We ourselves have our own emotions and feelings to wade through, wade with, stay with, and hold with. And so I think that by us removing that responsibility from children, sometimes we dehumanize them. We take that process and we say, I'm going to remove this from you. I'm going to turn this down. I'm going to move this aside. I'm not going to treat you like you're going to have responsibility in a few years. I'm going to maybe hold off on this. I'm not going to be honest about this. I'm going to say, oh, no, it's okay. Then, when it's time for them to know, to understand, they don't. We don't. And I feel like our parents did that. I'm like, oh man, there's a few more things I wish I had known just about adulthood. But now is the time for us to change that. And so I love that you're working with youth. And I feel like everybody needs to have their hand on the youth. Whoever controls the youth controls the future. And
Right.
that is a reality. And so it's time for us to get our hands on the youth and make sure that they're being steered and guided in the right way. The youth really are our future. They're our next presidents, senators, mayors. I'm like, if I'm going to have to be under your leadership, I'm going to have a hand in how you're raised. And I'm going to have a
Yeah.
hand in what you're taught, right? And how you're educated, and the way and the integrity and character that you carry forth. So I love that. I said all that to say I loved that comment. I thought it was so on point and profound. We have to start introducing that responsibility. No, we're not having our children pay bills, but maybe they need to see one, and maybe they need to see how much this
Right.
is, so you're not taking a 20-minute shower and you can understand that this is actually costing money. You can have a sense of, oh, let me be more aware and let me be more conscious of my decisions that affect the entire household. I love that. And I'm going to take it and use it. And I will give you credit. I promise.
Oh yeah. No, it ain't for me. It's for them. And that's what I try to tell a lot of the staff that I work with and a lot of the kids I work with. It's I could be doing a lot of different jobs and I could be
Yeah.
doing a lot of other things with my time. But you know, if I had me from when I was again 17 or 7 or however whatever age, I would have things would have turned out a little bit differently. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I am who I am now, and a lot of them just want to be listened to.
That's it.
And I think that's it doesn't have to be life changing advice or whatever the case is. Sometimes it's just listening. What's going. Like I said, I can find out a lot about what goes on in my work environment just by asking the kids how was your day, how was your weekend, what did you do yesterday, and they'll give me you know, I was pissed off because of this and this happened. It was like,
Mhm.
okay, all right, and now you know, uh, you're talking to the right person because now I can do something about it. But a lot of them are right. The school system, the foster care system, all these systems that take away that human element of who we are. You know, and I hate. I mean, I went to Brockton High. I know
Me too.
fights, and fighting the students and fighting the teachers and fighting everybody. And it sucks because everyone is dealing with something on some level. And I know, you know, and obviously in public school and education, the goal is graduate, right? So a lot of
Yes.
that work that needs to be done around, you know, the social and emotional learning and making sure I'm there for that student, or oh yeah, I saw the student with the you know, beat down, the teacher beat down the student. It was just it's out of hand to the point where, right, they don't respect us because we don't give them that respect, and they have every
Right.
reason to be upset. But you know, at home they're not getting the respect. At school they're not getting the
Mm-mm.
respect. So
Mhm.
why would it? Uh, who are you to tell me anything about my life? Because my parents at home drinking, doing whatever, not caring for me. You know, you tell me you care, but you know, in that finite amount of time that they're there for those 8 hours, you know, how are they able to differentiate who cares, really cares, and who's just doing their job? So, um, but yeah, let's. Oh God, I please, let's not fight the kids or fight the teachers. Let's not do that.
Let's be
That
done with
doesn't.
that.
Yeah,
Let's
that
be over with that.
we have enough stigmas about violence in our community, and um, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and try to pretend to be Gandhi because you know violence does have a place in society, but you know, I think for you know your advancement of your knowledge, the advancement of us as a community, it really we know the detriment that is served in our community already.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
My
mean, working with young people, I've learned just to sit there and have a conversation with them.
Mhm.
I don't, I don't allow myself to be too ignorant of things that these young people
Mhm.
are doing. Now they always doing something, but people ask me all the time, like, "How are you so effective with them?" It's like, cause I just sit there, listen, and talk to them. I don't talk at them. I talk with them, and
Hmm.
I really get to hear where their hearts are, where their minds are, and a lot of times behind all of the rah rah and the they're just confused and as lost as we were. And so it's like, don't
Absolutely.
forget who you were as a child when you were silenced all those times because you were
Hmm.
told be seen, not heard, or sometimes don't even be seen. This is grown folk talk. Go over there and shush, right? What we don't realize is that carried on into our adulthood. Now we don't speak up because you have
Ah.
silenced my voice. And now I don't know how to advocate for myself. So now I am susceptible to abuse. And it just continues and continues and continues. And, a lot of young people are angry, excuse me, because they're confused. Like Chris was saying, like, if I have neglectful parents and you think Imma respect you, no, because my
Nope.
first teachers who are my parents, they're not doing too hot. So I
No.
already don't trust adults. So I don't care what you say and what you do. I'm not listening. And it's like if you talk to them, if you just have a conversation and stop barking orders at them, you might get somewhere. And it's going to take time, but I always remember me as a teenager. I was a mess, very dramatic,
Me
very
too.
all over the place. And so I don't look at them like, "Ooh, y'all too much." These Gen Zs and Gen Alphas are very different. Very different. But
Period.
right, but I allow them to be that and I'm just like,
Mm.
"Hey, hey, let me help you out." Not because I want to control you because that's what they think. Not because I necessarily know better all the time because that's what they think. I'm just like if there's a space you're trying to walk and I can see right up ahead there's a ditch, whether you want to hear it or not, I'm going to warn you. Now, if
Yep.
you fall down there and you're looking up at me like, what, Jamae, you're right. I'm not gonna be like, I told you so. I'm gonna be like, get your tail up. So you see why I
Mhm.
talk? Like, come
Mhm.
on. We're doing this together. Young people need people to walk beside them, not only in front of them.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think effective leaders can lead from all points, not just in
Mm,
front. They can lead from the back, they can lead from the side, right? Leaders, you're supposed to be raising and not raising, you're supposed to be teaching the younger ones to replace you, to do better than you. That's what a good leader is. That's what I was taught. And so I can't teach you how to replace me if I only want you looking at my backside. What are you learning? My
yeah.
ears are over here. Ain't nothing back there. So like I can't see you, I can't hear you, and I can't talk to you if my back is to you. So I have to position myself and humble myself to walk alongside of you, or sometimes I have to show you that I trust you. So let you lead and I'm gonna be behind you. I can still see further than you, probably because I'm like 9 feet tall. But like I can still see, you know what I mean? But if we never teach them how to walk and how to lead. Like Chris said, when they become 18, they're gonna be like, I don't know what this is. I never had the opportunity to lead a thing. I never had the opportunity to where no adult trusted me with anything. So now that I'm an adult, you think I'm gonna know what to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why they're so reckless.
Yeah. I think that's what we're seeing now. Like
Mhm.
this lack of responsibility, accountability. We see a lot of entitled youth, and it's like, man, I know that I've watched a pattern happen that, maybe people our age or a little older, they felt like their parents were too mean on them, too mean to them and too hard on them. So what do they say about their children? I'm not going to be tough. I'm going to be easy. I'm going to let them do whatever they want. And this is the result that we're seeing, right?
Gentle parenting.
Gentle parenting works, but passive parenting hurts. you
Period.
can you can gently parent, and
Mhm.
gently parenting someone isn't repeating the same thing over and over again. You are helping them, like, okay, you're not listening to me, I see you need help getting up and turning off the TV. Let me assist you with this, and let me give you some incentive to get up. Maybe we
Mhm.
could go to the park tomorrow. Maybe you can get an extra snack. It's not like get up, no, let me help you. Gentle parenting actually takes more work, because passive parenting or that aggressive parenting, it's easy to do. Oh, you just yell, you just holler, but you have to walk with someone. And you know what? As you both were speaking, I'm like, man, we have to lead these youth from the rear. The leaders have to be behind. We have to be able to guide them, let them fall a little bit, let them make a mistake, but we're always there to help them, and we're always there to really care for them. And my mother always says that rules without relationship causes rebellion.
Mm.
We are demanding respect from students that we do not have relationships with.
Yeah.
And we're far past the days where adults should always get respect, for sure. However, students in turn should get respect. Youth in turn should get respect. They were not talking reckless and doing things like, ooh, I'm going to say this and say that. No, there are people too. My sister Alicia said that. I always say that kids are people too. You know what? And I don't even know how we got here, but this is where we need to be. I saw a post and it said, do you think that children deserve apologies? We're not talking about animals in the zoo. We're talking about a human being who is young in their formative years, who has feelings, who has emotions that they don't know how to handle. Why don't we teach them and share? And why don't we show them how to effectively accept an apology and hear an apology, and be there in that space where it's like, ooh, you did something wrong, I'm going to apologize. I did something wrong, I'm going to apologize. Then we want them to be so like emotionally sound. We haven't trained them, we haven't taught them. The fact that we have to ask, does a child deserve an apology? Sure, if you did something wrong and you know you did. Because
Mhm.
what type of sociopaths are we raising? Right? What type of
Right.
narcissists are we raising? Right?
Mm.
Let's be real
Mhm.
clear and honest, because a lot of that stems from not getting the attention and the affirmation you got at home. So you're deciding, I'm just going to gather all the attention for myself. That's the origin of that. That's how that starts. So, I think it's a good segue. We are an hour and 4 minutes in, believe it or not. This was such a good episode. We are going to wrap up, and I think we are getting into what our next topic is going to be. And it's going to be about broken homes, and we're going to really begin to explore what that looks like, what that causes, how to identify it. If that was you, let's talk about some ways to kind of navigate through that. people deal with broken homes in a certain way, and so we want to make sure that we're talking about that. But we just talked about wounded healers, and if you're a wounded healer and you need a safe space and you need someone to be with, you can reach out to us, or you can really find that place. It'll come to you, right? If you think about it, if you're like, man, I really need this space, you watch, you'll trip over that safe space and you'll be right there. I want to give everybody a chance to say your last words before we sign off on our first inaugural episode of Let This Mind. We talked about wounded healers. What say ye? What say ye?
I'll just wrap up by saying thank you for joining and participating. Again, Lilac, Jermaine, thank you for having me. I will be here next week, Broken Homes. I'm excited. I'm ready for that topic.
Yeah.
Get ready for the facts. Get ready, not only the feelings but the facts.
Come on.
And as always, love yourself, and peace and love. That's it from me.
I should have gone first because I hate following Chris.
With that voice, boy, I'm like, yeah. What'd you say, Chris?
It's the spoken word, like poeticism, if that's a word in him.
It's a word
And I've
now.
been over here stumbling over words, and it's like,
No.
Sorry. Anyway, no, you're great. Like Chris said, thank you guys for coming. This platform is not just another mental health awareness platform, because there's a ton of them that exist out here. So the reason why we opened up with Wounded Healer is because we're bringing a perspective, not just from professional standpoints, but also people who are actively in the healing process. So, like Steph Lilac said, we're here, Melville Enterprises and Selah Ministries and A Fighting Chance. We're here. Don't feel like you have to suffer in silence and like no one understands me, because we're here. We were called to do this work. We were sent to do this work. We were created to do this work, just probably like you are as well. So don't do this alone. You are seen, you are heard, you are embraced, and we will see you next time.
We will see you next week. Thank you for tuning in.